Hey there, self-care warriors. Welcome back to Self-Care Haven. So today I wanted to continue my series on BPD versus NPD. And in my previous video, I talked about the differences between the two disorders as well as the overlapping similarities in their interpersonal exploitiveness, their manipulative behavior, as well as their excessive rage and need for validation from the world. But I also talked about the differences in their responsiveness to treatment, their reasons for interpersonal exploitation and manipulative behavior, as well as the way that they operate in relationships in terms of the sadistic pleasure that they gain from manipulating others. BPD individuals tend to manipulate others for different reasons than NPD individuals. It's not necessarily always for sadistic pleasure. Usually their extreme emotions are arising organically, and because BPD individuals experience the full range of emotions, there is more authenticity to their emotional expression. That is one way that you can distinguish between BPD and NPD, because NPD, or people with ASPD, antisocial personality disorders, tend to have a flat affect, which means they're expressionless. They have those dead eyes, no smile, nothing when they think that no one is looking. So BPD individuals tend to be overly emotional. NPD individuals are only overly emotional when they're trying to manipulate someone for their own agenda. Another difference is that while narcissists do fall apart if they are discarded first unexpectedly and they lose that source of supply and don't have other sources of supply, the borderline individual truly fears abandonment to the point where they are extremely hyper-vigilant about their partner's every move. They do everything in their power to avoid being abandoned. And they tend to vacillate and split between these dichotomies of all good and all bad. That's known as splitting. So they're basically saying this person is all bad or this person is all good. Whereas NPD individuals tend to subject their partners to a cycle of idealization, devalue, and discard, followed by hoovering, which starts the cycle all over again. And they do this with a type of cold, haughty, contemptuous undertone that is lacking in a borderline individual. A borderline individual will often vacillate like a pendulum so quickly in their rapidly shifting moods that it is a lot more organic. It's coming from a state of their own extreme emotions, and they're not choosing to split as an effort to devalue. It truly is an organic reaction from their highly charged emotional states. BPD individuals are also more responsive to treatments like DBT. In fact, there are borderlines who have been diagnosed in the past who are no longer meeting the criteria for borderline personality disorder because they went through treatment. And usually they get into treatment because of inpatient treatment, because some of them deal with suicidal attempts and that lands them in a hospital. Unfortunately, they deal with a lot of self-harm, whereas NPD individuals tend to harm others for supply. NPD individuals, on the rare occasion that they do go to treatment, usually go from therapist to therapist because they get easily injured by any threat to their perceived superiority. That perceived superiority and sense of entitlement is so intrinsic to their disorder that they do not want to hear healthy feedback about themselves. They will not accept it. Or if they tend to go into couples counseling, they tend to triangulate and put on a sweet mask with the therapist. And that way they can manipulate both the therapist and the victim into thinking that the victim is the problem. The false mask of the NPD individual is very telling. BPD individuals feel so dysregulated that they don't have time or the energy to don this fabricated mask. Usually BPD individuals, their rage is more disassociative, their rage is more impulsive. It comes out so often and so organically that it doesn't necessarily mirror the same type of calculated, cold, narcissistic rage that narcissists can quickly shift back and forth from, because BPD individuals often wear their emotions on their sleeve. Now, whether or not an abuser has a disorder or which disorder they have, it's really important for you to evaluate your own self-care and think about the relationships that are toxic to your life. If a person has a disorder and is not getting treatment for their disorder, it's highly recommended that you reevaluate your investment in that particular relationship, because your self-care is your priority, and abuse, regardless of its intention, can still be very harmful. So that being said, I do want to acknowledge that there are differences between the two disorders, but that there are individuals with both disorders. There's also individuals who've been misdiagnosed as BPD who have complex PTSD. There's also individuals who have been misdiagnosed because of their gender, because clinicians have these stereotypes of what females should act like versus males. So they may see a male borderline who they misdiagnose as a narcissist, or they may see a female narcissist or an antisocial personality, because we're not used to thinking of females as sociopaths, but there are plenty of females who are sociopaths. I'm telling you right now. And when we think of the Jodi Arias case, for example, she was seen as borderline, but she shows many of the traits of an antisocial personality disorder. She's very cold, she's very calculating, and that is the type of cold calculation that borderlines often lack because they are so excessively emotional. Again, borderlines have a better potential for experiencing empathy if they work on treatment, if they get themselves into treatment, whereas narcissistic individuals, that sense of entitlement is going to be intrinsic to their disorder. They don't want to think of themselves as not superior, even for just a minute, and therapy challenges that false mask that they strive so hard to protect at all costs. So remember that there can be misdiagnoses, there can be overlapping symptoms, there can be differences, there can also be complexities in the ways that male borderlines are treated versus female borderlines, or female narcissists are treated versus female borderlines. And there can be people with both BPD and NPD at the same time. And those are the people who tend to be extremely abusive, and they tend to have not only the traits of both disorders, but they have that cold, calculating, sadistic pleasure of the narcissistic individual locked into that disorder as well. So when we're thinking about these two disorders, it's important not to get so trapped into labeling that we forget that, regardless of what disorder someone has, we still have to take into account their behaviors, the effect that their behavior has on us, our self-care, which is our priority, and also the fact that abuse is still abuse, and that abusers are still accountable for their actions, and that they should still be getting treatment if they have a disorder or if they have issues that they need to sort out, and that it doesn't matter as much whether or not they have BPD versus NPD if their behavior is so destructive that it has a severe impact on our self-care. So think about the behaviors that you've experienced more so than the labels themselves, and that might give you a clue as to whether someone is more narcissistic versus borderline, whether this person is going to be willing to go to treatment or not. And if they have shown you that they are not willing to go to treatment or stay within treatment, that is something that you don't have to deal with. You don't have to stay with anyone who doesn't take care of themselves, whether that means they have a personality disorder or not. I would give the same advice to anyone who doesn't have a personality disorder as well. If that person is not taking care of their mental health, they need to understand that's going to have an impact on their partner. So as a partner of someone who may have a personality disorder or may just have issues, just be mindful of the fact that if they are a full-fledged narcissistic personality disorder, they're very unlikely to get treatment and stay within treatment. If they are borderline, they still have that possibility of being in treatment and benefiting from it, but it all depends on that specific individual. Just because one borderline succeeds in treatment doesn't mean another one, won't drop out of treatment, or that other person doesn't have other issues or other disorders that are comorbid or other addictions that are interfering. no person is 100% exactly the same. They will have different factors that factor into this complexity, and it's important to consider that as well. But at the same time, abuse is still abuse. Abusers are still accountable for their behavior. Abuse still has an impact on your self-care. So again, think about whether or not they're going to treatment. Think about the fact that their behaviors still have an effect on you. And really take care of yourselves first, because you are not here to fix anyone. You are here to stay true to yourself and to take care of yourself. So I hope this video helps to empower you, validate you, and until next time, take care.